Good afternoon, good morning, good night, everybody. You're tuning into another soothing ASMR
Buenos
reading.
noches, buenos tardes.
Oh yeah, true. Oh yeah, we need to cross over to different languages, dude. I'll do Hebrew. Shalom kulam, boker tov, lila tov.
Yeah, guten Tag.
Oh, there we go. We got four languages, dude. We'll explode in viewership soon.
Yeah.
We're doing another ASMR reading of Friedrich Nietzsche's Thus Spoke Zarathustra. We're on book number 4, and the two sections we have in front of us are The Cry of Distress and Conversations with the Kings. So we're going to have our good friend and lover boy Ryan start off with
Oh,
The
jeez.
Cry of
It's a
Distress.
weird intro. Okay. The cry of distress. The following day, Zarathustra was again sitting upon the stone before his cave, while the animals were roving about in the world, outside fetching fresh food and fresh honey too. For Zarathustra had consumed and squandered the old honey to the last drop. But as he was sitting there with a stick in his hand, tracing the shadow of his figure in the ground, thinking and truly not about himself, and his shadow all at once, and he started back in alarm, for he saw another shadow beside his own. And as he quickly rose and looked around, behold, there stood beside him the prophet, the same that had once eaten and drunk at his table. The prophet of the great weariness who taught, it is all one, nothing is worthwhile, the world is without meaning, knowledge chokes. But his face had changed in the interim, and when Zarathustra looked into the people's eyes, his heart was again startled. So many evil prophecies and ashen lightning flashes passed across this face. The prophet, who had perceived what was going on in Zarathustra's soul, wiped his hand over his face as if he wanted to wipe it away. Zarathustra did the same. And when each had silently composed and reassured himself, they shook hands as a sigh, that they wanted to recognize one another. Welcome to you, said Zarathustra, you prophet of the great weariness. Not in vain shall you once have been guest at my table. Eat and drink with me today, also, and forgive a cheerful old man for sitting down at a table with you. A cheerful old man, answered the prophet, shaking his head. But whoever you are or want to be, O Zarathustra, you have little time left up here to be it. In a little time your boat shall no longer sit in the dry. Am I then sitting in the dry? Asked Zarathustra, laughing. The waves around your mountain rise and rise, answered the prophet. Waves of great distress and affliction, soon they will lift your boat too, and carry you away. Thereupon Zarathustra was silent and wondered. Do you still hear nothing? The prophet went on. Does not the sound of rushing and roaring arise from the depths? Zarathustra was again silent and listened. Then he heard a long, protracted cry, which the abyss threw from one to another, for none of them wanted to retain it, so evil did it sound. You preacher of evil, said Zarathustra at last, that is a cry of distress and a human cry. Perhaps it comes from out of a black sea. But what is human distress to me? The ultimate sin that is reserved for me. Perhaps you know what it is called. Pity, answered the prophet from an overflowing heart and raised both hands aloft. O Zarathustra, I come to seduce you to your ultimate sin. And hardly were these words spoken than the cry rang out again, and more protracted and more distressful than before, and much nearer. Do you hear? Do you hear, O Zarathustra? Cried the prophet. The cry is meant for you. It calls to you. Come, come, come. It is time. It is high time. Hereupon Zarathustra was silent, confused, and deeply shaken. At last he asked like one undecided, "And who is it that calls me?" "But you know who it is," answered the prophet, vehemently. "Why do you hide yourself? It is the higher man that cries for you."
The higher man, cried Zarathustra, horror struck. What does he want? What does he want? The higher man. What does he want here? And his skin was covered with sweat. The prophet, however, did not respond to Zarathustra's anguish, but listened intently toward the depths. But when it remained quiet there for a long time, he turned his gaze back and saw Zarathustra standing and trembling. "O Zarathustra," he begun in a scornful voice, "you do not stand there like one made giddy by happiness. You will have to dance if you are not to fall over. But even if you were to dance before me and indulge in all your tricks, no one could say, 'Behold, here dances the last happy man.' Anyone who sought him here would visit these heights in vain. He would find caves, certainly, and backwood caves, hiding places for the hidden, but not mines for happiness and treasure houses and new gold veins of happiness. Happiness. How could man find happiness with such buried men and hermits? Must I yet seek ultimate happiness upon blissful islands and far away amongst forgotten seas? But it is all one. Nothing is worthwhile. Seeking is useless, and there are no blissful islands any more. Thus sighed the prophet. With his last sigh, however, Zarathustra again became cheerful and assured, like one emerging from a deep chasm of light. "No, no, thrice no," he cried vigorously, and stroked his beard. "I know better. There still are blissful islands. Do not talk about such things, you sighing sackcloth. Begone, thought! Cease to splash about such things. You morning rain cloud, do I not stand here already wet with your affliction and drenched as a dog? Now I will shake myself and run away from you, so that I may become dry again. You must not be surprised by that. Do you think me discourteous? But this is my court. But concerning your higher man, very well. I shall seek him at once in those forests. His cry came from there. Perhaps he is being attacked by an evil beast. He is my domain. He shall not come to harm. And truly, there are many evil beasts about me." With these words, Zarathustra turned to go. Then the prophet said, "O Zarathustra, you are a rogue. I know it. You want to be rid of me. You would rather run into the forest and waylay evil beasts. But what good will it do you? In the evening, you will have me back. I shall sit in your own cave, patient and heavy as a log, and wait for you." "So be it," Zarathustra shouted behind him as he departed. "And whatever in my cave belongs to me also belongs to you, my guest. But should you discover honey in there, very well. I just lick it up, you growling bear, and sweeten your soul. For in the evening we must both be in good spirits. In good spirits and glad that this day has ended. And you yourself shall dance to my songs as my dancing bear. You do not believe it? You are shaking your head? Very well. Go on, old bear. But I too am a prophet. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
Wow. What a great section we have there. Why don't you give us a little brief summary of what you think this is all about?
Oh, indubitably, good sir. Indubitably. Let me get started by emphasizing the two forces of nature that we are uh, graced with, and that is this prophet of wariness is no other than a pessimistic, anxious filled person of the shadows. And then you have the happy, zen, optimistic guru Zarathustra himself. Who is this prophet guy? He's pretty nihilistic, you know? Let's read some of his quotes here. It is all one. Nothing is worthwhile. The world is without meaning. Knowledge chokes. I mean, geez, dude, take a load off, will you? Uh, so you have this character. He comes in and he is rushing Zarathustra. He is trying to show Zarathustra, "Your time's up, buddy. The Ubermensch is out there, and you got to go get him. You're running out of time." I think we've all been there in that situation before, with anxious thoughts about the future. And notice how Zarathustra deals with him. By remembering how optimistic and how grand the horizon is. That is, I think, generally the very brief summary without going too far into detail.
Yeah, I just add on to that. Yeah, for me, kind of another final test for Zarathustra. He's come across, or the prophet has come to him, and basically bestowed upon him, I guess you could say that the prophet is on a separate journey to Zarathustra, where Zarathustra has seen the great calamity that is going to occur in mankind with a great increase in nihilism and pity for oneself. And I think, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but the prophet has kind of jumped into the rabbit hole of nihilism and is trying to find the best path to follow in that nihilism, right? So now it's basically just a conversation of him trying to convert Zarathustra to his views of the world, and Zarathustra staying strong to his belief of overcoming man, not to pity, and to become or get even closer to the goal of the Ubermensch, or, well, more so, giving the keys to the person that will become the Ubermensch.
That's right, for we are the bridge between man and the Superman.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was pretty good summary for sure, especially the highlighted point about pity. Because if you just put yourself in the shoes of having this, I mean, we all have. I'm sure we all have a few voices in our heads. You know, we're a little unscrewed. We got a few nuts loose, and I definitely, this resonates with me a lot. All of these thoughts, like having pity for myself and worrying, and combining that with like the worry about the future, and like actions that I know have to be done but I have not done yet because I'm procrastinating this and that. All of these things that this prophet is doing or trying to get Zarathustra to do, is very relatable to the human experience.
Yeah, and I think so many times when people are thinking and it turns out to be something that is out of their control. So really it's a waste of time. If you I think there's a quote by Seneca that I really like where he's talking to, I think, Lucilius, and he tells him there are more things, Lucilius, that frighten us than injure us, and we suffer more in imagination than in reality.
And
So if if you're pitying someone, you're lowering your state, because I think a lot of people, I may be wrong, but a lot of people see themselves in another person. So the pity towards them, while coming from a good heart, isn't necessarily true pity for that person. Because it's like, what if I was in that scenario? I can give you an example of pity I felt today. I was going to the gym, and there's some construction going on, and it's pouring down with rain. And this guy is there with no umbrella, with the stop sign conducting traffic. And I felt pity for him, because it's like he's in the rain doing this traffic job. And I felt if I had an umbrella in the car, I would have gave it to him, which I don't think the Ubermensch would have approved of. But I think it's like, it's like, I think we need to, what I'm trying to say, okay, let's get this clear, is people need to believe that others are stronger than themselves, or some sort of, that way of thinking. Like, don't think people are so weak that they can't handle those scenarios.
I have one disagreement with your point, and that is, it's not about the action, it's about the intention. So, like you giving that person an umbrella, it depends on your intention behind that action, and that would dictate, I think, to me, if it was, from a Nietzschean point of view, good or bad. Like, if you were to do that out of pity, then yes, that's not good. The whole point, the
Mm.
whole point is that pity bad. Everybody, say it with me,
Well,
pity bad.
for me, it was like, if I was out there, I was like, how is no one giving this guy an umbrella? That's what I was pissed off about, It's like an umbrella's like a couple of dollars, and this guy's in the pouring rain. So it was like, I was more upset about that. But I guess it's like when you define one word that can mean so many things, it becomes overly complicated.
True.
And that's why, like, I really enjoy when people try and explore these ideals and what they really stand for, rather than like people know what a word is, but do they really know what the word is?
Yeah, that's a huge thing that I've encountered in reading, especially his text. Is like, even here, if I were to try and define my interpretation of pity, like I did earlier before we started recording, it was I still only painted such a vague picture. You know what I mean? It was very hard to describe such simple words we take for granted and what we think it means.
Yeah,
But
most definitely.
but yeah, besides that, I think I guess the only thing to really close on is Nietzsche's or Zarathustra's response to this overwhelming amount of nihilistic pessimism that this prophet gives him, which that it starts with oh God, if I can remember this quote, dude, I don't want to look it up because it might take like a minute to look it up. But if I can remember this quote, it goes with this perfectly, and it comes from earlier in this book. Um,
Well, why don't you
he's
find the quote, and then I'll continue with a thought that I had.
okay. Go ahead.
So I just really enjoyed this section because it shows such humility, but also such adamant resolve. Because these two have such like the complete opposing ideas, and they're having a conversation about such, and one is trying to convert the other, and Zarathustra is just trying to basically defend himself as the prophet was the attacker. He came to him to change his ideals, to seduce him into committing his ultimate sin. And I just think it was so beautiful how he ended it, and how, in today's time, it seems that people are just so agitated discussing ideas. Their idea is right, and whoever's on the opposing side is wrong. And in this example, we have these two conversations, and at the end, Zarathustra even offers him everything in his home, and even his most prized possession, I guess you could call it, his honey, if you could find some. And I thought that just shows a testament of Zarathustra's will, and I guess, like, his only purpose is finding the bridge, or building that bridge from man to the Superman. So
Sure.
he's I think he just showed, right, his adamant resolve, and I guess the prophet kind of accepted it as well. And Zarathustra offers him, food and sleep and all that, which is just a great example of human behavior when there's two disagreeing parties.
You're right. The prophet had before I read the quote, the prophet had no choice but to accept this overwhelming sense of optimism because glass half empty kind of guy this guy is. Guess what a glass half full is gonna do? It's gonna fill you up, and then you're a full cup. Would you look at that? Shim bada boom bam bing bang boom. You know what I'm saying, dude?
Dude, we got a
Uh,
full 16-ounce glass right here.
Stay hydrated, people. Drink your water. So the quote that I was trying to bring up earlier in reference to this section is, "I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought, the second a good word, and the third a good deed." And I think that's so important because it is very easy to find ourselves in the dark, in the abyss of our own thoughts or situations. And sometimes this isn't like obviously universal principle. I'm not Immanuel Kant, but sometimes it really is so simple as 3 things. And in here in this section, to tie it back, you can see that again, it began with a good thought, which was he remembered and restored his optimism in remembering how vast the horizon was. Once the wary prophet told him that there are no more islands, Zarathustra said, "Ha, bitch, you're wrong. Plenty of islands to go to." So that's the optimistic thought. The good word, which is he told the prophet he told the prophet not out of spite, but like with true good, wholesome gold intention. He told the prophet, "You're a guest in my home. Stay here. This home is your home. Take what you want. Enjoy the honey. Maybe it'll sweeten your soul." And then the third good deed is he's gonna have dinner with him later. He's gonna dine and you know and whatever. He's gonna dine the prophet later. So there's his good deed. So it's wrapped up neatly there.
Uh, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I actually really enjoyed kind of what you were saying there about the islands. I just thought that was such a fascinating part because, I'm a big believer in if you can't find happiness like where you are, then seeking something out is futile. So it's like, I
Yes.
think that actually exemplifies Zarathustra, right? Like, even though he hasn't found the bridge, or he hasn't created the bridge for man yet, although it's a skeletonized bridge, if you will, um, waiting for some concrete to be put down and someone to walk across. But he's really kind of found that inner peace. He's found that meaning, and I think, uh, it's like if you went to a monastery and found that enlightenment for yourself, the world hasn't changed. Your reality has changed, but others have not. So it's a difficult thing to pursue, which is like elevating mankind, because if you've elevated yourself and you've become a higher man or found that enlightenment, then it's like you're elevated above them, but they're still the same. So do you know what I'm saying? So if you go out in the world, it's like they're not gonna be able to interact with you, or like Azar, or the Ubermensch, or Griffith and Gus, they're not gonna be able to see eye to eye because they're not equals. So it's definitely a difficult thing to pursue, but also, as we like to stay optimistic, you can't not pursue something just because someone says you can't, or it's not possible.
100%.
You can
Prove the haters wrong.
get as close as you possibly can, and then you can decide for yourself if it's possible.
There you go. Cool, man. That was a great section. Are we ready to move on to the conversation with the Kings?
Yeah, let's do it.
Alrighty, everybody. This is Zar. I'm going to set the setting up as if we're watching a play here. Zarathustra is off after he talked to the prophet and restored his faith, and is gone to find the Ubermensch. And he comes across 2 kings and 1 axe, and is eavesdropping on them. And let's hear what they have to say. Zarathustra had not been going an hour through his mountains and forest when all at once he saw a strange procession. Along just that path that he was going down came two kings, adorned with crowns and purple sashes and bright as flamingos. They drove before them a laden ass. What do these kings want in my kingdom? Said Zarathustra, in astonishment to his heart, and quickly concealed himself behind a bush. But as the kings drew abreast of him, he said half aloud, like someone talking to himself, Strange, strange! I cannot make this out. I see two kings and only one ass. Then the two kings halted, smiled, gazed at the place from which the voice had come, and then looked at one another in the face. No doubt people think such things as that at home, too, said the king on the right, but they do not utter them. The king on the left shrugged his shoulders and answered, It is probably a goat herder, or a hermit who has lived too long amongst the trees and rocks. For no company at all also corrupts good manners. Good manners, replied the king indignantly and bitterly. What is it we were avoiding then? Is it not good manners? Our good company? Truly, better to live among hermits and goat herds than with our gilded, false, painted rabble, although it calls itself good company. Although it calls itself nobility. But there, everything is false and rotten. Most of all, the blood. Thanks to old, evil diseases and worse quacks. I think the finest and dearest man today is a healthy peasant, uncouth, cunning, obstinate, enduring. That is the noblest type today. The peasant is the finest man today, and the peasantry should be master. But ours is the kingdom of the rabble. I no longer let myself be taken in. Rabble, however, means hodgepodge. Rabble hodgepodge, in that everything is mixed up with everything else. Saint and scoundrel, and gentleman and Jew, and every beast out of Noah's ark. Good manners. Everything is false and rotten with us. Nobody knows how to be respectful anymore. It is from precisely this that we are running away. They are honey-mouthed, importunate dogs. They gild palm leaves. It is this disgust that chokes me. That we kings ourselves have become false, arrayed and disguised in the old, yellowed pomp of our grandfathers. Show pieces for the stupidest and the craftiest and whoever today traffics with power. We are not the first of them, yet we have to pretend to be. We have at last become tired and disgusted with with this deception. Now we are avoiding the mob. All these ranters and scribbling blue bottles, the stench of shopkeepers, the struggles of ambition, the foul breath. Foul to live among the mob. Foul to pretend to be the first among the mob. Ah, disgust, disgust, disgust. What do we kings matter anymore? Your old illness is assailing you, the king on the left said at this point. Disgust is assailing you, my poor brother, but you know that someone can overhear us. Hereupon Zarathustra, who had kept his ears and eyes open to these speeches, rose from the hiding place, stepped towards the kings, and began, He who has overheard you, he who likes to overhear you, O kings, is called Zarathustra. I am Zarathustra, who once said, What do kings matter any longer? Forgive me, but I was glad when you said to one another, what do we kings matter? This, however, is my kingdom and dominion. What might you be seeking in my kingdom? But perhaps on your way you have found what I am seeking? That is the higher man. When the kings heard this, they beat their breast and said in a single voice, We have been recognized. With the sword of these words, you have cut through the thickest darkness of our hearts. You have discovered our distress. For behold, we are on our way to find the higher man. the man who is higher than we, although we are kings. We are leading this ass to him, for the highest man shall also be the highest lord on earth. There is no harder misfortune in all human destiny than when the powerful of the earth are not also the first men. Then everything becomes false and awry and monstrous. And when they are even the last men and more beast than man, then the value of the rabble rises higher and higher. And at last the rabble virtue says, "Behold, I alone am virtue." "What do I hear?" answered Zarathustra. "What wisdom from kings? I am enchanted, and truly, I already feel the urge to compose a verse about it, even if it should be a verse not suited to everyone's ears. I long ago unlearned consideration for long ears. Very well, come on." But here it Oh, I'll let you read. You want to read from the second one on?
Sure.
I'll just finish up this quote. But here it happened that the ass too found speech. It said clearly and maliciously, "Yeehaw! On a time, 'twas A.D." This is the poem he wrote. "Once on a time, 'twas A.D. one, I think. Thus spoke this Sibyl, drunken without drink. How bad things go! Decay, decay! Near sank the world so low. Rome is now a harlot and a brothel too. Rome, Caesar's a beast, and God himself a Jew."
The kings were delighted with these lines of Zarathustra's, and the king on the right said, "Oh, Zarathustra, how well we did to come out and see you. For your enemies have shown us your image in their mirrors, from which you gazed with the grimace of a devil, and with mocking laughter, so that we were afraid of you. But what good it was! Again and again you stung out ears and hearts with your sayings. Then at last we said, what does it matter how he looks? We must hear him, he who teaches. You should love peace as a means to new wars, and a short peace more than a long. No one ever spoke such warlike words. What is good? To be brave is good. It is the good war that hollows every cause. O Zarathustra, at such words the blood of our fathers stirred in our bodies. It was like a spring speaking to old wine casks. Our father loved life when swords were crossed like red-fleckled serpents. They thought all sons of peace faint and feeble, but the long peace made them ashamed. How they sighed, our fathers, when they saw resplendent parched swords upon the wall. Like them they thirsted for war. For a sword wants to drink blood and sparkles with its desire. As the kings thus eagerly talked and babbled of the happiness of their fathers, Zarathustra was overcome by no small desire to mock their eagerness, for they were apparently very peaceable kings that he saw before him, with aged, refined faces. But he controlled himself. "Very well," he said. "Yonder leads the way to Zarathustra's cave, and this day shall have a long evening. But now a cry of distress calls me hurriedly away from you. My cave will be honored if kings would sit and wait in it. But to be sure, you will have to wait a long time. But really, what does it matter? Where today does one learn to wait better than in courts, and the whole virtue still remaining to kings is not today called being able to wait. Thus spoke Zarathustra.
Oh, bravo, good sir. Bravo.
Brr.
You want to you want to summarize it, or do you want me to summarize it?
You can do a little summary, mate, you know?
Okay. I got it, Dad. Don't worry, Dad. I can do it. I can hold the flashlight for you at night while you do the car stuff, Dad. Don't worry.
Okay,
You don't have
great.
you don't have to hit me again.
Yeah, no problem. I can't promise anything.
Only if you had your mustache. Oh, what a glorious mustache it was. All of our listeners, you have no idea. All right, so here we have Zarathustra, not wandering. He is in search of the Ubermensch, but not long after he left the wary prophet, he comes across these two kings and one ass. Why would the two kings have one ass? He says. And that's because they are also looking for the Ubermensch. Funnily enough, they're all going to the same party, and the king tells Zarathustra, "Hey, look, bud, we're looking for the next people. We see the inherent flaws and the moral decay of society, and that's pretty evident in the way they talk smack about their kingdom, because they see how fake people are with their quote unquote good manners, as they go off about." And so they're looking for the Ubermensch, the person or people that are going to supersede and be beyond all of this nonsense. They talk about their fathers and their fathers' necessity for war and how that helped keep good virtues around, or at least I believe that's the interpretation. And then Zarathustra tells them, "Hey, look, bros, you go chill in the cave with some homies. I'm gonna go get this Ubermensch, and I'll meet you guys back." So yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary of the section.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add to that, although we could, I guess I kind of want to start it off by discussing the nobility and the peasantry. And I think, it's like, sorry, let me just get these thoughts across. I had so many just flood in right then. So,
Write them down.
like, I don't know if you've read the story of Dorian Gray, but basically,
Enlighten me, sir.
yeah, basically, he's like a wealthy young man, and he has a friend who's a painter who paints a picture of him that's like so amazing or something, that actually comes to life. And the picture is a reflection of Dorian's soul. So as he grows bored and he does more depraved acts, his picture that he hides within his home becomes more depraved until I assume it looks almost like Smeagol or Gollum, which is like another example of obsession with like something that's like depraved, like a ring, and how he turned from a hobbit into the Gollum, right? So it's sort of the same thing. So like when he's talking about peasantry being like the best humans and they should rule over us, it's because the nobility is donning a mask of like a facade of who they really are. They're trying to artificially be the higher man by having good manners and dressing well and being patient in the courts, but really, in their minds they're donning one mask, but their true selves are kept within to keep to the standards of the court. So really you couldn't tell who was an ally and who was an enemy, sort of, because everyone sort of acts within the same lines of behavior. So I think Zarathustra has talked about this before, or yeah, with the thieves being much better to be around than the nobility because they're thieves. That sort of thing. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Oh, keep going. That's good.
I think so. How else can we talk about this? Yeah, so I don't know. I guess we could talk about how dependent on the situation you're in, you don a mask that isn't your true self. Say you're a politician, you're not going to be able to be your true self because that might be
What?
it. Yeah,
No.
because like it's so many people's personal opinions are in such a niche crowd that you can't grab the attention of the majority. So these people in the courts, they have good propriety. They know how to speak to one another in a polite manner, or there was another thing of like the invention of the wine glass. Like the wine glass was invented, I think I'm not sure the date, but basically originally the glass was very ornate, and the stem, if you applied too much pressure, would snap in half. And in
Oh.
comparison to like the barbarians or barbaric people or whatever, they would use like wooden ale mugs or horns and slam them on the table. So the glasses were an example of like refinement, that if you put too much pressure on it would snap, and it's like, what kind of life is that you're at a dinner table and like you have to be worried about applying 1 gram more pressure on your wine glass, and it's like, I think the kings in Zarathustra have seen this, how ridiculous their lifestyle is in comparison to what it truly means to be a human, and that's why they're seeking out something beyond what their current reality is. They look at the swords on the wall. It's basically like looking into the past and being wishful that you want to be back in those times, but the current reality won't allow it unless someone changes reality itself. So that's why they're seeking the Ubermensch as a person who will change their society to something more meaningful and real, where they don't have to don these fake masks.
Damn, bro, that was fire. The swords on the wall. That's such a good point about like returning to a better or like a pastime that was quote unquote good, because you can just think about the swords on the wall is a literal metaphor of their father's obsession with war, because ideally, and I can kind of respect this, is that the war kept the morality or the virtue of the kingdom high. Um, in a sense, I don't know if you want me to explain that or not, but
Yeah,
it
yeah,
came
go
off
ahead.
to me that way. So the swords on the wall, they were talking about how they had like this innate sense for death and killing and war, and how it says the let me find the exact quote here. Here. For a sword wants to drink blood and sparkles with its desire. As the kings, yeah, our fathers loved life when swords were crossed like red fleckered serpents. So you can think about, for me, it's like a reflection of like um the tribalism in a true instinctual sense. It's like their fathers, they were exercising an instinctual like an instinctual muscle within all of us, which is like this tribal aspect of society. And so when they don't have this war, they atrophy, and that's like the beginning, ironically, like the decay of the society is when there's no war, when there's no enemy to like help you keep your wits about you and to keep sharp and to keep observant and to prepare and to have like a strong sense of purpose and meaning and morality, then things just kind of devolve into like people very narcissistically only caring about themselves and everything that we see in society today, and that's what they're exemplifying. And so breaking free of that chain and realizing that like a more fulfilling life is is one returning to man, returning to nature. And to bring up your point about the wine glasses, it's not about repressing, and I do believe control, because the point of that is to like show how controlled and sophisticated you are because you know how to use silverware and you don't break the wine glass. But I think that's a repression of human nature as opposed to the embrace of human nature, which would be idealized or romanticized in the Vikings. You know how they were very, very like they were Ubermensch if you think about it. Really, I mean, they were giant tribes and many tribes all together, and they all kind of did their own thing, but they weren't. Well, okay, I'm just going on a rant now, so I'll stop because that's too much of a rant.
Okay, well,
Um,
actually,
go ahead, go ahead.
at the end, you kind of gave me a good idea about, the Vikings and nihilism in itself. The Vikings believed that if they died on the battlefield, they would be accepted into the halls of Valhalla, right? So, for them, adversity, battle, challenge was everything because you would gain the approval of the higher man or like their gods. So it's like, although like for today, if you were sent out into battle, you'd be like, oh, I don't know about that, like, oh, I
I
don't
don't
know
know
if
about that, Chief.
I don't know if I want to die. But for them, it was like, oh, if I fall on this battle, giving it my all, I'll go to the halls of Valhalla. But if I don't try, if I'm cowardly in my ways, then I'll be like, I don't know what their other one was, but like they wouldn't get to the halls, which was where you wanted to be at,
That's where you want it to be.
So
No,
it's
that's
like,
actually.
so
Sorry,
I'll just finish it's quick. So basically, that's the point, right? Is like, that's the point of this whole book is finding that meaning for life and finding your own moral code, what it means to live, why it's important, why the things that you do are important. If you're not, if you've fallen into this easy, pitiful, nihilistic state, or experiencing, even if the world is burning, you should still try and be your best self. You've got to,
the world is definitely burning.
yeah, but
I,
yeah.
I like the example you brought up with the Vikings about the battles because think about like the intentions as well. Because again, I'm a huge proponent of yes the action matters and the consequences matter more than the intention because that is the effect. But we can't neglect the intention behind an action because that is truly revealing of the human being behind the action. And so the Vikings would be a great example. They weren't killing for bloodlust. They weren't killing for fame or power or women or money. They were killing because to them, the opposing force was trying to subdue them and their loved ones. And so it was only fighting out of necessity and fighting for the right causes, which is to preserve like the people that, you're to preserve your clan. It wasn't just, I'm sure in some cases it was like unnecessary violence, but in most cases, I do believe that there was a true value. Like they had a good reason to fight and a good purpose, and that helped them kind of like supersede in their morality. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So
And I mean, it's just like, uh, you know, societies that run on a basis that you're doing something for a higher purpose always seem to exceed and be like romanticized. Like look at the Renaissance, like some of the temples they built to the Greek and Roman gods, beautiful structures lasting thousands of years, and it wasn't done for one man. It was done, to basically appease the gods, right? To make something
mhm.
so beautiful that they would also adore it. I guess what I'm trying to say is like, you look at all these things in society, and there's always like they're doing it for a higher purpose, for a god, or for acceptance into Valhalla, something like that. And then, we've got the prophet in the last section there preaching the nihilism of like, oh, nothing's worth doing and all this. He's lost his belief.
Yeah, he lost his belief. He lost his faith in the future. Like
Mm.
he is clearly not optimistic about the future. And this is very relevant because I've had people like so blatantly nihilistic and just like not like having any faith in the future. Um like a girl, I remember, oh my god, she was like an environmental studies girl. It was so dramatic. But like we were just chill, dude. It was like a group of people. We're all chilling at the beach, and I started shooting the shit about like jokingly, because I'm a edgelord, I was joking with my cynicism about like the human race being a virus and we're fucked, and like, just joking around with it. And then she actually went to town about, yeah, man, like this is insane. Like, there's too many damn people. We're taking up all the resources. We really have to, figure out a solution to overpopulation. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, bro. I was like, hold on, Bill Gates, hold on, buddy. But anyways, besides that point, oh my god, did I forget the actual point of the the faith in the future? No, that was the critical point. Yes. Think about if you planted something and you give up on it. Or like if it's dying, let's say one of your plants, are you just going to give up because the future doesn't seem like it's worth it? Like think about the mindset behind that, and then what happens after. It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. The plant dies because you look at it dying and you're like, oh, it's dying, so there's no point in saving it because it's on its way down. I'm gonna just, you know what I mean? As opposed to the other way, which is like, this is an opportunity to like revive this thing. Like, it's not healthy and it could be better with your help. You could change the soil, give it rich nutrients, change its environment. Maybe we give it more light, maybe less light, more water, whatever. And that's like a great analogy for us as humans and our what should be our true faith and optimism of the future. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And we'll bring it back to the book. And
Yeah.
the kings, they, I guess they had a fear of the future, but at least they were willing to do something about it. Or they had a fear of the present, on how, their forefathers lived a much better existence than they did. So at least they're doing something about it by seeking the Ubermensch, or the pathway to finding fulfillment, or the path of the Ubermensch, the Superman.
And look who they decide to. They say the healthy peasant is actually the like closer to the Ubermensch, closer to like a healthy and positive example of a human being. And I think it's true. I think society overcomplicate, like especially modern society, post-industrial revolution, and all this fun stuff. It kind of overcomplicated like the fundamentals of a good life in like the platonic sense, or the fundamentals of like happiness, which is just a small community of people who you love and care for and bond with. That community in that realm is so important for the human being. We're social animals. And then the fundamental basic stuff. You're a farmer. You're outdoors all the time. You're working with the land. You have a spiritual connection with the animals and the land, and you have infinite greatness because of that. And everything is optimistic. You're eating healthy foods. You're not eating processed things that have been transported overseas and frozen with preservatives or fucked with in terms of their genetics. You're hydrating. You're drinking water. You ain't got no soda if you're out there motherfucking walking around, carrying buckets of milk to your house from the barn. What else did I miss? Exercising, playtime, free time. You're not worried about TVs and shows. You gotta, as a classic like country folk, they just have a fiddle and they just play with the fiddle in their free time, and that's like their artistic expression. So you have that base covered. I don't know. I'm gonna stop ranting, but it's simple. It's a lot simpler than people think.
Yeah, and I'll kind of finish it up here with
Yeah.
a point like everything in life is perspective, and if you want more knowledge, then you need more experiences to change your, or not, to evolve your perspective. And it's kind of what the kings did, is they viewed their own lives and then they viewed the life of the peasant and compared and contrasted the two. And any sane man would have said, I would have wanted to be the king over the peasant. And it's like, it's the idealistic and romanticized way we view things, that we believe that there is an answer that is materialistic, or a concept created by man that will bring us happiness. So having the title of king and the treasures and riches and power that goes along with it. And these men who have experienced that life have no desire to really continue it, and they're seeking something else. So I think it's important for people to understand all placements in life and find out what, I guess, the best way to live is for them. not what
Yes,
society deems fit.
exactly. The subjective, and that because that's what you're right. That's what he's preaching. I think it makes the most sense. Is I don't know. No, I'm not gonna. Never mind. I'm not going down that road. I'll literally talk another half an hour going over everything we've done before in previous podcasts. Like, you know. So, all right. I like that. I think we covered all the bases. We had a solid conversation. We stuck pretty well to the text. And people, stay tuned because we got some really good sections going on. I'll give you a brief outline of the next parts of the book. He's got a few more people he's picking up, like the leech, like the sorcerer, like the old pope, like the shadow. These are all critical figures who we may or may not have met before, and they're returning. And he's going to gather everyone and have this giant party before the Ubermensch. This is the noontide and sunset of the book in book 4. It's the peak of the day and going into the sunset, and it leaves you with some sick optimism at the end of it. So stay tuned, people.
Stay tuned, and thank you for listening to another Dense Thinkers podcast. We hope that you are on a good path to finding that fulfillment and that anti-nihilism philosophy, and finding that true purpose of what it means to live and what it means to be human.
That's right. Oh, and I forgot we have to do a shout out to our sponsor, the DMT Elves. We got picked up by them. They thought our content was pretty cool.
Dude, so sick.
No, just kidding. Our real sponsor is Raid Shadow Legends. You guys should play that game on mobile. Just kidding. I hope you guys got a good laugh out of that. Love you all. Say something. Oh, my ending point will be the 3 steps away from paradise, people. It's I was in darkness, but I took 3 steps and found myself in paradise. The first step was a good thought, the second a good word, and the third a good deed. That's all I got, people. See you later. Uh-oh. Ryan? Hello? Oh, no.